Okay guys, going to take a look at some of the logos that were submitted last week. Please, if you haven't got that in already, get your sketches and your vectorized version of your monograms into me as soon as possible. So here we go, we'll take a look at this sketch, we'll take a look at this vectorized outline, and we'll take a look at this finished colored logo and see what ways we could maybe go about this slightly differently, just to clean up some of the lines to make it look a wee bit more modern and sharp, and to use the grid tools that are available to us. So if you go to view, you'll see you can hide or you can show your grid. You can also choose whether or not you're snapping the grid by toggling on and off this little tick box. So at the moment I'm snapping on my pen tool and my shapes to the grid. So let's take this first one here. We've got this triangle shape of the A in the background. Now there's a number of different ways that we could go about creating this. We could start with a square, and then I can use my move tool here, Alt, and I'm just creating a wee copy of that square. And then I'm going to rotate it, holding Shift to rotate it exactly by 45 degrees. I'm just going to create a wee copy of that. And then I'm going to go back to this original square, and I'm going to use this to cut out part of this one so that it can become a triangle. So again, to do that we use our Pathfinder tool. If you don't have your Pathfinder options open, you go to Window and then Pathfinder. So the Pathfinder, you'll notice it says minus front. So if I have the two of these selected, it will minus the front object. Now I want to leave behind that triangle. So obviously the front object must be the wrong one. So if we look in our Layers tab here, if you don't have your Layers tab open, you can go to Window and then Layers. You'll see the rectangle here is selected, and the rectangle that's not rotated is selected as well. I obviously need to pop that rectangle at the top, and it's going to minus the front one from the other one whenever I click minus front here. There we go, so we get our triangle shape left. Okay, and then that triangle's looking a wee bit wide, so what I can do is make a copy of that, and I'm just going to pop that in there. That's looking a wee bit better there. Let's keep it nice and wide because I want this H to fit into it somewhere here. So we've got this triangle shape. I'm gonna just move this a wee bit over here out of the way and create another copy of it. So the next thing that we need is our H shape, and I can use the H shape to interact with this in a minute. So let's just go ahead and use the pen tool to construct our H. So here the H is inside, so it's not coming quite to the edges of the A. So let's take a look at how that might look here. If I start drawing this, it's also not quite to the top, so let's just go for this. For the moment. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in, just holding Alt and zoom to see what we're working with here. So you can select your individual vertices by, instead of using the V selection tool, use your A direct selection, and that will allow you to select these little vertice points here. So I'm just going to do that and kind of got my H shape going. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's make a copy of that just by holding Alt and dragging across. We've got a wee copy going there. Now it's hard to see this H against the A, so I'm just going to colour this using the fill tool with a slightly off kind of grey colour to make sure that it stands out, but I still get the nice dark silhouette of what the shape's going to look like in the end. So now it's a matter of fudging about with the size of this to try and get it to work with the background A. So I've already got something going on there. Let's take a look at maybe making this part of the H again, direct selection tool. I'm going to just pull those in. Oh, I've still got my triangle selected. Let's see. Direct selection. I'm going to select that, hold Shift, and just click these guys here, and then I'm going to move them over. See what it looks like if the H is a little beefier. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere there now. It's starting to look kind of like a logo. Let's just go ahead and make this a bit bigger as well and see what we get. Okay, already we're getting something there. So it's all just going to be to do with playing about with the values here that we got. We could turn off snap if we didn't want to use our snap tool anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and do that a second. Turn off snap to grid. Okay, and I'm just going to try and edit these so that they look a wee bit better in proportion. So again, direct selection tool, and then I'm just going to click on the individual little vertexes, hold shift, click the other one, I'm going to click and drag that. Okay, that's looking a wee bit more reasonable there. Let's see what we can do with this A. Let's take that up so that it just meets the H on the corners there. That looks kind of neat there. Yeah, so we've got something going. We've got a really, really simple shape. It's almost like a part of a star that's been cut off at the top. And we've got our H sitting neatly within that. I'll just create a copy of that. Again, grab my selection tool, hold Alt, make a copy. And is there anything else that I could change about this? I'm pretty happy with how that's sitting at the moment. Okay, so we've gone from this kind of rough sketch here to something that could look like a logo here, and we can mess around with the colors and things here. We can see what that'll look like if it is, say, cut out by going to the minus front option, and you can see what it looks like with the H cut out of that A triangle. I'll create another copy here. Again, this is why we make copies, so that we can kind of make a lot of different versions of things. You got lots of space to work with here, so mine are all kind of jammed up together, but I could do whatever I want here. I could start to play about with colors, so I could look at oh, that's a very gaudy looking purple. Let's see. Kind of like the H being lighter and then the A being a similar color but a bit darker in the background, something that's going to stand out. Alright, something like that isn't looking too bad as a wee corporate logo or something like that. So you're already starting to get somewhere. One thing that's annoying me is how thick the H is whenever I'm looking at this triangle bit here and these wee triangle bits off the side, and I'm thinking that what I could maybe do is grab the edges of this. I'm just going to select that H first, then direct select the corners. Okay, and I'm going to move that in to, so I'm moving that to -4 pixels in. I'll move this one +4 pixels. You'll see your little measuring tool there. It automatically brings that up, so I know that they're even. Okay, sweet. We've got something that looks like a thing there, and we could also see then how this version of it looks with the cutout design by, again, sorry, I had direct selection there, just your normal selection tool, hold Alt, create a copy, and then I'm going to do that minus front again thing. That looks kind of cool. I quite like where that's going, so that's something that you can work with. You could also try bringing that down, maybe seeing how it would work inside a circle. I'm just going to go to view and turn my snap to grid back on for this. So first of all, I'll snap this onto the grid, then I'll get my circle tool here. I'll click maybe here and hold shift, okay, till I get a circle that works for me. Now this is obviously in front. I'm going to change the fill to something that's going to stand out. Let's go for this lighter blue, and then I'm going to pull that ellipse in behind the other shapes. If I can find one of these, there we go. Okay, so that circle's a bit big. Let's just get that down a bit. Holding shift to constrain the circle proportions. Just going to use my move tool here, V. Okay, there, that's sitting pretty well in the middle. I'm just going to turn my snap off a second and center that the way I think would look best. Boom, center. Okay. I want to up a wee bit. That top point isn't working for me. Let's see. I'm going to turn all my snapping tools off. Snapped point. Alright, let's try just moving this bad boy up. Cool. Okay, so you can see how it works on the background here, and then what I can do is do that minus front thing again. Okay, and you can see how it works kind of on different backgrounds, or I could create a copy of that and then do the minus front thing just to see. Okay, so you start to get an idea for how it might look in an app icon or something like that. So the next logo there should be easy to create using our grid, and this time we're going to use the pen tool. Just make sure that your snap to grid is back on there. Pen tool P, and what I'm going to do is just change this back to black. That fill. So here we go. We're starting with this S shape, and we're going to use our grid. So let's say the S is going to be 2 pixels wide. Let's leave 4 there. I'm just guesstimating how big it's going to be that way. We'll fix it later. Okay, that's worked out. We've got 4 pixels here, or 4 units, sorry, and 4 units here of the ruler. So that's looking pretty much like what we've got there. The next thing is the G. So the G ends there. Let's take a look. It should fit in about here. And yeah. G goes right down to here and across. Right, let's see how that works. There we go, we're guessing the size of a lot of this, but let's see what we got as a result of that. So that's not looking too bad. I imagine that's more or less what you've done there for that one, except you can see that these spaces aren't consistent. So this is a wider space, this is a smaller space. So trying to keep all of these spaces equidistant will really help your design. So you can see here, I tried a few variations of what we started out with, just to try and get that G closer into the S. So I started with that. You can see here, I added this tick to the S at the bottom, and I took that to its natural conclusion here. Then I kind of realized this looks like a 5. It looks like it's saying 5G instead of SG. So I went down and I took that little tick out again. I started messing around with colors. I looked at whether the light against or dark on light looks good or light on dark, and then I also looked at whether or not the S would look better in front of the G. So I've got 2 here that I particularly like, and it's just a decision of whether the S or the G should have prominence on that. So there you go, that's a look at those logos. It works in black and white, it works in monochrome. So this next one, we have the basic shape in the background, the primitive, the circle, and we're going to use the shape tool for that. So go up to my shape tool, and the ellipse tool's L, so I'll start off with that ellipse, and I've got my snapping settings on. So let's go with something like that. And next thing is the text, so I'm going to use my text tool T. I'm just going to click over here, and you see I can type in RJH there to preview that, and I'm just going to move that down with my move tool so I can see it a wee bit better. Cool. Now you can choose whatever font you want by going to your fonts list here. If you've selected the layer, it will no longer be typing, and it will allow you to preview all of these different fonts. Now just looking at the letters that I have there and the way everything's shaped, the close one that I got to it was this one, Franklin Gothic. The J doesn't quite curve up as much, but I think it will work well with this line because the line won't be interrupted so much by the curve in the J. So the thing is, the J is bigger here, but we don't want to just blow up the text size of this, or it'll just look like a huge big J, and we want to keep the thickness of the lines relatively consistent. So to do that, you can actually rasterize your text, or sorry, you can change it into vector data. So what I'm going to do is create a wee copy of that, and then go up to my object menu, and you'll see expand. And you can expand the object and the fill. Okay, so it's just going to be an object that's filled in black. Alright, so now what we got, if we look in the right hand side of our layers, is groups of our H, J and R that are separated into separate shapes. So if I select my direct selection tool, I should be able to select individual points. So I can select that on the J, for instance, and I can pull that up kind of the way it's going to be. So let's make a copy of that. Okay, and then let's bring the R up. I'm going to use direct selection tool again just to select my R, and I'm going to move that up to here. Then I'm going to, H is already sitting there, let's see. I may need to make this J a bit higher if I want the bar to fit in between these two. Okay, there we go, we've got something going there. The next thing is to use our shape tool, and I'm going to use a rectangle, and I want a rectangle that's going to be the same kind of width as these letters here, so I'm going to have to turn off snapping for that. Snap to grid anyways, great, and that's going to snap to that pixels, those pixels there, cool. So that's roughly the right shape that we want, and then I'm going to rotate that by 90 degrees holding shift, and I'm just going to align that with my bottom of my R there. I'm going to use the direct selection tool, A, to grab these little points and move them in with the H. I'm just going to check again that these are level with the R. Yeah, intersecting with that R there, cool. Okay, so this is to create this bar here. I could put the bar on the top and bottom as well, but I'm just going to simplify this design a wee bit, so it's not going to be exactly the same as what we had. So the next thing is to move these letters around a wee bit, so I'm just going to create a copy of all of this using my move tool, selecting all the objects, and then alt and drag to do that. So let's take a look. If I turn off my snap to pixel and I turn off snap to point, and I just start dragging this, okay, that's just given me, it's just sitting on the bar there. So what I want to do is either make this bar skinnier like it is here, or keep it the same width as these letters. Let's try both. Okay, I'm holding Alt and it will make both sides skinnier at the same time. Let's see how that looks. That doesn't look too bad, does it? Kind of separates the line from the text and gives the text a bit more prominence, so let's go with that. And let's just look back at our source. Okay, so it's tilted and it's on this circular logo here, so let's make a copy of our circle and just turn snapping back on for a minute. Snap to grid, so I can snap that onto a center line. Now, do I like the way that this R is spaced? Not really, so I'm going to go direct selection, just select my R, and I'm going to move that in a wee bit. Hold Alt. And then I really want to get these wee side parts so that the J stands out, so what I can do is select both of those. I can use Pathfinder to divide that, okay, so it divides it all into separate bits, and then what I can do is go into this and find each individual little part here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that out a bit like that, and then I'm going to find the other bit in my layers, and just using my V tool I can grab that and move that out a wee bit. Next thing we're going to do is copy that onto our shape and fill that with white, okay, so that it stands out on our shape. Now one problem is the R here. That little part in the middle of the R is its own shape, so what we're going to have to do is look for where that is. There it is there, and I'm going to have to fill that black. So we've got our basic logo shape. I'm going to reshape this around it now. There we go, so we've got our RJH inside the shape. I'm going to make a duplicate copy of that and then tilt it like our original logo showed. So let's see, about 17 degrees, something about that. Yep, there we go. And then you've got your coloring, so you can go in and you can fill kind of retro looking logo. Let's go with that same red, and then fill this wee bit of our same yellow that we had there before using our swatches, and boom, you've got your logo done. And you can make some fine adjustments then. I think this needs to be rotated a wee bit more actually, the text, just to fit inside it. Yeah, it may look a little lopsided, but that's not too bad. There we go, and we've got our kind of, it looks like quite an old school kind of logo with a color scheme that you got going on there. So bear in mind, some of the big differences that we've done here is instead of using lines around the edge of our logos, we have used block colors, and that can really help the logos to read well, and it will increase the clarity, especially when you're viewing something small like in a mobile logo or something like that. It prints better, you can print it onto shirts without worrying about small stitching and things. So there we go, that's a wee redesign of some of those logos using exactly the same designs that you guys came up with, and then just tweaking them a wee bit to show you how the logo process can result in a few different options for a client to choose from.